My name is Renee, I'm 32, and if there's one thing I've learned the hard way, it's that family can be your biggest cheerleaders or your worst critics. For the past several years, I've been working as a sales rep for a large company. My job has me on the road, constantly, hotel rooms, airports, rental cars. The grind never stops. And when I'd finally dragged myself back home, I wasn't welcomed by peace and quiet. No, I was stuck in a shoebox apartment with paper-thin walls. I could hear every argument my neighbors had, every television show blasting at full volume, every toddler meltdown at midnight. Imagine getting home from a week-long trip across 3 states, wanting nothing more than 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, only to hear your neighbor's surround sound shaking the walls. That was my life. I'd been saving for years, pinching pennies on dinners out, cutting corners where I could, and one night, lying awake at 2 a.m. listening to the couple upstairs scream at each other, I said, enough. I deserve better. I didn't need a mansion, just a decent house with a yard, some privacy, and neighbors who respected peace and quiet. So, I called my friend, Jake, he's a realtor. Jake, I need you to find me a house, I told him. He laughed and said, about time. What are you looking for? I laid it out plain and simple, medium-sized, not some monster I couldn't take care of, away from busy roads, and with a big backyard. And good neighbors, I added. Ones who don't make me regret moving in. While Jake started searching, I decided to stop by my parents' place. I don't get there often, constant travel will do that, but I still felt guilty. The minute I pulled into their driveway, I spotted my sister Jenna's car, no surprise there. Jenna, 2 years older than me, is practically a permanent resident at our parents' house. She's married to Ryan, a guy who never looks up from his phone, and together they've got 2 kids, Tyler, 6, and little Sadie, 4. When I walked inside, it was the usual scene. Tyler zooming toy cars across the floor, Sadie coloring wherever she pleased, Mom busy in the kitchen, Dad waiting for dinner, Jenna sunk into the couch, looking exhausted, and Ryan glued to his screen. We sat down, plates steaming with mashed potatoes, green beans, and meatloaf. And as always, the conversation revolved around Jenna and the kids. How brilliant Tyler was, how adorable Sadie was, how hard it was for Jenna to keep up with grocery bills and clothing costs. I sat there quietly, chewing, waiting for my turn. Finally, when Tyler spilled his juice and everyone scrambled to clean it up, I seized my moment. Actually, I said, I've got some news too. I'm planning to buy a house. Silence. Dead silence. Forks froze midair. Dad stopped chewing. Mom just stared at me. I thought maybe they'd break into smiles, maybe say, that's wonderful, Renee. You've worked so hard. That's what a normal family would say, right? But no. Instead, I got a look of irritation, like I'd just announced I was moving to Mars. Jenna's expression was the worst. Her face twisted, eyes narrowing, like I had personally offended her by daring to want my own place. Then Mom finally spoke, setting her fork down with a clink. Renee, you don't need a house, you travel all the time. What's the point? You can keep renting. I blinked, trying to process. What do you mean, I don't need a house? Everyone deserves a home. That's when Jenna jumped in. I need a house way more than you. I've got kids. They need rooms, a yard. You're just one person, never even home. Your house should be mine. I laughed, thinking she was joking. But when I looked around the table, no one laughed. My dad nodded like she was making sense. Ryan actually agreed. Even my mom chimed in, family helps family. Jenna's struggling with 2 children. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. This wasn't support. This wasn't love. It was entitlement, pure and simple. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, staring at the glowing screen of my phone as one message after another rolled in. Mom's texts painted me as selfish. Dad's tone was commanding, like I was still a teenager under his roof. And Jenna, she flooded me with guilt trips, practically spamming my phone with demands and insults. Each word chipped at me, but underneath the hurt was something stronger, determination. I wasn't going to let them bully me out of the life I'd worked for. Over the next 2 weeks, the silence from my family was deafening. No surprise visits, no phone calls, just an empty space where their voices used to be. For the first time in years, I felt both abandoned and free. That's when Jake called. His voice had that spark of excitement. "Renee, I've got the perfect one. 3 bedrooms, a big yard, quiet street, good neighbors. The owners are relocating out of state, and they're eager to sell. Oh, and they're leaving the furniture." I drove out with him that Saturday, and the moment I saw the white siding and red front door, I knew. This wasn't just a house, it was my home. The oak trees in the yard stretched tall and steady, almost like they were waiting for me. Inside, the sunlight poured across the hardwood floors, the granite countertops gleamed, and the living room felt like a sanctuary. Jake rattled off the price, and for once, the numbers lined up exactly where I needed them to. I signed the papers within weeks. When the keys landed in my hand, I swear I could have cried. Moving in was like breathing fresh air for the first time. I carried my boxes through the door, looked around, and whispered, "This is mine." No pounding bass through the walls, no strangers screaming in the hallway. Just birds in the backyard and quiet nights where I could actually sleep. I didn't tell my parents or Jenna a thing, they'd lost the right to be part of this. Instead, I invited people who had always supported me, friends from work, cousins who genuinely cared. We grilled burgers in the backyard, laughed under string lights, and toasted to new beginnings. Then the knock came. Standing on my front porch were my parents, Jenna and Ryan, dressed like they were VIP guests. My heart sank. They waltzed right in without waiting, putting on a show for everyone, bragging about how proud they were. The same people who told me I didn't deserve a house were suddenly shaking hands and acting like they'd been in my corner all along. Jenna and Ryan even snooped around upstairs, opening closets and inspecting my bathroom like it was a home tour for them. When they finally left, Mom gave me that disappointed look. "You should be ashamed, not inviting your own family? That's wrong." I closed the door behind them, not ashamed in the slightest, only relieved. My guests noticed their act, too. They whispered, "Your family seemed off." I just smiled and changed the subject. Life in that house became everything I dreamed. On weekends, I dug into the soil, planting roses and trimming hedges. That's how I met Mrs. Hayes, the sweet 70-something neighbor next door. She leaned over the fence one Saturday, her gloves covered in dirt, and showed me the right way to cut back stubborn bushes. We swapped numbers, and she promised to keep an eye on things while I traveled. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe, like I had someone in my corner. I thought I'd finally found peace. But a few weeks later, while I was out of town for work, Mrs. Hayes called late one night. "Renee, dear, I hate to bother you, but there are lights on in your house. I hear voices. I think people are inside." My stomach dropped. I pulled up my security cameras, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Just as I was refilling drinks for a couple of my coworkers, the knock came. Sharp, deliberate, the kind of knock that makes your stomach twist because you just know it's not another friend showing up late with chips and dip. I opened the door and nearly dropped the tray in my hands. Standing there, dressed like they were headed to Sunday service, were my parents, Jenna and Ryan. "Surprise," Mom said with this sugary smile, the kind she used when she wanted something. "We found you." I froze. Before I could even respond, they pushed past me like they owned the place. My living room, filled with the people I'd chosen to invite, went quiet as my family marched in, smiling and shaking hands as though they'd been supportive all along. "Look at what our Renee accomplished," Mom gushed to one of my aunts. "We're so proud of her." Dad puffed out his chest, shaking hands with my coworkers. "We always knew she'd do great things. Raised her right, didn't we?" Meanwhile, Jenna and Ryan slipped away, wandering through the house like potential buyers at an open house. I found Jenna upstairs in my bedroom, pulling open drawers and inspecting my closet. Ryan was downstairs in the kitchen, poking through cabinets and tapping the granite countertops like he was testing their durability. Every muscle in my body was tight, but I plastered on a smile for my guests. This was my night, not theirs. I wasn't going to let them hijack it. When they finally gathered their coats and made their way toward the door, Mom stopped and looked at me with that same disappointed glare I'd grown up with. "You should be ashamed, Renee. Not inviting your own family? Not telling us you bought a house? That's just wrong." Dad chimed in, his voice stern. "That's no way to treat your parents. We had to hear about it from others. I held the door open without a word, and when they finally walked out, I closed it behind them like I was sealing a vault. The tension lifted instantly. My friends laughed, the music came back on, and for the rest of the night, I celebrated with people who genuinely cared. Afterward, life settled into a rhythm I had always dreamed of. Every morning, I sat on the back porch with a steaming cup of coffee, watching birds hop across the yard and feeling the cool breeze move through the oak branches. At night, I slept without earplugs for the first time in years, the silence wrapping around me like a blanket. On weekends, I rolled up my sleeves and dug into the garden. That's how I met Mrs. Hayes, the sweet woman next door. She leaned over the fence one Saturday, dirt on her gloves, and showed me how to prune the roses without killing them. "Don't be afraid to cut them back," she said. We talked for an hour, and by the time I went back inside, I felt like I'd made a friend for life. She even promised to watch my place whenever work sent me out of town again. For a while, it felt like everything was finally falling into place. I had my home, my peace, and a neighbor who actually looked out for me. I thought the chaos of my family was behind me. But then, on one of those trips, my phone buzzed late at night. Mrs. Hayes's voice trembled through the line. "Renee, I hate to bother you, but there are people in your house. Lights are on. I hear voices. I think someone's inside." My heart stopped. I leaned against the fence that morning, still holding my pruning shears, and instantly felt at ease with Mrs. Hayes. She had that warm, no-nonsense charm older women often carry, the kind that makes you feel like you've known them forever. We talked about roses, the unpredictable Texas weather, and eventually about my job. When I mentioned how much I traveled for work, her eyes softened. "Don't you worry," she said. "I'll keep an eye on your place when you're gone. Been here over 20 years. Nothing gets past me." It was exactly what I needed, a neighbor who cared, someone trustworthy. I gave her my number, thanked her, and went back to wrestling with the rose bush, my heart lighter than it had been in months. For once, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. The next several weeks flew by. Work kept me busy, but whenever I was home, I poured myself into the yard. I tore up weeds by the handful, planted rows of tulips and daisies, and even added a couple of bird feeders near the porch. Every morning I'd sip my coffee and watch cardinals and finches swoop in for breakfast. At night, I'd sit outside with a glass of wine and marvel at how peaceful life could be. No noisy neighbors, no drama, just me, and the quiet. Then came another business trip. 2 weeks out of state, a client I couldn't say no to. Before I left, I walked next door and reminded Mrs. Hayes. She patted my arm and promised again she'd watch things closely. I trusted her. Honestly, she reminded me of the grandmother I never had. The first week of travel passed without a hitch. But late one Wednesday night, my phone buzzed. Seeing her name lit up the screen immediately set me on edge. "Renee," she whispered, "I hate to bother you, but there are lights on in your house. I hear music, voices. Someone's inside." I froze in the middle of my hotel room. "Are you sure?" I asked, half hoping she was mistaken. "Positive," she said firmly. "I know what I saw." My mind spun. I tried to think logically. Maybe she was confused, maybe the motion lights came on, maybe it was a delivery. Still, doubt gnawed at me. I apologized for not believing her and hung up, my heart racing. The next day, she showed me proof. When I got back home, she invited me into her kitchen and pressed play on a shaky video from her phone. My house glowed in the night, shadows moving across the windows, faint laughter carrying through the still air. My stomach sank. Someone had been in my home. That same afternoon, I called a security company. By the next morning, sleek little cameras were tucked into corners, invisible unless you knew where to look. One above the front door, one at the back, another in the living room. All connected to an app on my phone, streaming crystal clear video. I tested it myself, walking from room to room, watching my own movements on the tiny screen. It gave me peace of mind, but also a hard edge of suspicion. Who had gotten inside before? How? For nearly a month, everything was quiet. I checked the cameras daily, sometimes obsessively, but the feeds showed nothing more than squirrels darting across the yard and Mrs. Hayes watering her hydrangeas. Slowly, I let my guard down. Then came the next trip. Just 3 days into it, my phone buzzed again. Mrs. Hayes's voice was tight, urgent. "Renee, I'm so sorry, but it's happening again. Your house lights are on. There are people inside." This time, I didn't hesitate. I opened the app, and what I saw made my blood run cold. 3 days into the trip, my phone lit up close to midnight. Mrs. Hayes's name appeared, and the sound of her shaky voice sent a chill down my spine. "Renee," she whispered, "I'm seeing people in your house again, music, voices, lights, I'm not imagining this." My heart started pounding. This time, I didn't dismiss her. I fumbled for my phone app and pulled up the live feed from my brand new security cameras. What I saw nearly made me drop the phone. It wasn't strangers. It wasn't burglars. It was my family. There, they were, my parents, Jenna and Ryan, parading around my living room like they owned the place. And it wasn't just them. They'd invited friends, 8 or 9 people total, lounging on my furniture, drinking from my wine glasses, laughing as if it were some holiday celebration. Jenna strutted through the rooms, pointing things out like a real estate agent giving a tour. Ryan was behind my bar, mixing drinks as though he were the homeowner. My dad sat back in my favorite chair, looking perfectly at ease, while my mom bustled in the kitchen with trays of food. I couldn't breathe. I gripped the phone so tightly, my knuckles went white. These were the very people who told me I didn't deserve a home. And now they were throwing parties in mine. Rage cut through me. I dialed 911 with shaking fingers. "There are intruders in my house," I told the dispatcher. "I can see them on my security cameras. About 8 people, drinking, partying. I'm out of state for work, no one has permission to be there." The dispatcher's calm voice kept me steady. "Stay on the line. Officers are being dispatched now. Keep watching, and update me if anything changes." So, I did. I watched every horrifying second through the cameras. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the smug way Jenna leaned against my kitchen counter as if she'd earned it. Then, red and blue lights flickered outside. 2 officers walked to my front door and knocked hard. The music inside stopped instantly. Ryan, clearly drunk, stumbled to the door. I could see him gesturing wildly, trying to explain something. Then the officers stepped inside, and the whole living room erupted into chaos. My mom looked stunned. My dad's face went pale. Jenna's eyes filled with tears as she tried to defend herself. Their friends sat frozen, confused and scared. And Ryan, well, he made everything worse. He got loud, pointing fingers at the officers, slurring his words. One officer stayed calm, taking notes, but when Ryan shoved him, it was over. In seconds, he was in handcuffs, red-faced and shouting. More squad cars pulled up, and one by one, everyone was escorted out. I sat there in my hotel room, watching my family led into police cars like common criminals. Jenna sobbed. My parents looked humiliated. And Ryan was dragged away, still trying to argue his way out of it. Minutes later, I got the call. "Miss Renee, this is Officer Daniels. We've detained several individuals from your residence. They claim they had your permission to be there. Is that true?" "No," I said firmly, my voice shaking, but steady. "Absolutely not. I never gave anyone permission, never handed out keys. They broke in. They don't belong there." The officer was quiet for a moment. "Understood. We'll hold them overnight. When you return, you can file a formal complaint." When I hung up, my phone buzzed again and again, calls and texts from Mom, Dad, and Jenna. Mom begged me to clear things up. Dad demanded I tell the police it was all a misunderstanding. Jenna sent frantic messages about her kids being left with Ryan's parents. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I set my phone down, stared at the hotel ceiling, and let out a long, shaky breath. For once, I wasn't the one who felt ashamed. "Absolutely not," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "I never gave anyone permission to be in my house. I never gave them keys, and I sure as hell didn't tell them to throw a party." There was a pause on the other end before Officer Daniels spoke again. "Understood, ma'am. They'll remain in custody overnight. You can file a formal complaint once you're back in town." When the call ended, I just sat on the edge of the hotel bed, phone still in my hand, staring at the dark screen. My family had finally crossed a line I didn't even know existed. They hadn't just disrespected me, they'd violated my home, my sanctuary. I'd built this place with years of hard work and sacrifice, and they treated it like a rental hall they could unlock whenever they wanted. The text started pouring in minutes later. Mom, begging me to please explain to the police this is all a misunderstanding. Dad, trying to sound authoritative, telling me to fix this mess before it ruins the family's reputation. Jenna, spamming me with long, rambling messages about how I was destroying her life and leaving her kids without stability. I didn't answer a single one. I wanted them to sit in that holding cell and think about what they'd done. By morning, I couldn't take staring at the same hotel ceiling anymore. I called my boss, explained that there was a family emergency, and booked the earliest flight back home. The minute I pulled into my driveway, my stomach twisted. From the outside, everything looked normal, but when I opened the front door, reality slapped me in the face. The living room was a disaster. Wine glasses, with red stains, sat abandoned on the coffee table. Empty beer bottles were tucked between couch cushions. Someone had left greasy pizza boxes stacked on my counter, and crumbs littered the floor. My favorite chair still had an indentation from where my dad sat, and I swear I could smell my mom's cheap perfume lingering in the air. It wasn't just messy, it was invasive, like every surface carried the fingerprints of their betrayal. I cleaned in silence, bagging up trash, scrubbing stains, washing every dish twice just to rid myself of the thought that they'd been handled by people who had no right to be there. Each sweep of the sponge felt like reclaiming my space. By the time the sun dipped low, the house was spotless again, but I was exhausted. Still, I knew what I had to do next. The following morning, I walked into the police station. The air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, the kind of sterile atmosphere that made everything feel more serious. At the desk, I gave my name, and within minutes, Officer Daniels appeared. He was professional, calm, and matter of fact. Your family is still here. They're insisting this is all a mistake. Do you want to speak with them before we move forward? I agreed, though every muscle in my body screamed not to. They brought me into a small room, and the second my parents saw me, they sprang to life. Renee, thank God you're here, Mom said, her voice dripping with fake relief. Tell them you gave us permission. This has gone too far. Dad leaned forward, his tone commanding like I was still a child. Stop playing games. Tell these officers the truth before you regret it. Jenna was crying, wiping her face with tissues, wailing about how her kids needed her and how I was ruining her family. Ryan, eyes bloodshot from the night in custody, glared at me with a hatred that could burn holes in the walls. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The truth? I said, my voice calm but firm. The truth is you broke into my house. You partied in my living room. You used my things without my permission. And you lied to the police about it. The room went silent. For once, none of them had a comeback. Officer Daniels nodded. Thank you, Miss Renee. We'll proceed with charges unless you instruct otherwise. I signed the paperwork with a steady hand, each stroke of the pen feeling like a wall rising between me and them. This wasn't just about one night. This was about years of being dismissed, belittled, and taken for granted. They thought they could steamroll me forever. Not anymore. I walked out of that police station with the weight of years lifted from my shoulders. For once, I hadn't caved, hadn't bent under my father's sharp tone or my mother's guilt trips or Jenna's constant theatrics. I'd told the truth and held my ground. They wanted me to back down, to smooth things over, but not this time. Back at home, I couldn't stop pacing. Every room felt tainted by what they'd done. I went through the drawers, closets, even the laundry room, looking for signs of how long this had been going on. The wine rack was half empty, and some of my towels were missing. They had lived here when I was gone, treating my home like their weekend retreat. It was one thing to be entitled, but this? This was calculated theft of my privacy. When the officer later explained how Jenna had stolen my keys, making molds at my own housewarming party, of all places I felt the floor tilt under me. I'd invited her in, and she'd used the opportunity to betray me in the worst way possible. And finding out someone in my own company had fed her details about my travel schedule? That was salt in the wound. It meant my private life had been an open secret, shared like gossip at my expense. They didn't serve time, but the fines were crushing. I heard through a cousin that Ryan lost his job after his arrest showed up in the background check. Jenna's little circle of friends turned on her too. Apparently, none of them enjoyed the experience of being dragged out of my living room in handcuffs. Can't blame them. For weeks, the phone calls kept coming. First, Mom's pitiful voicemails, her voice thin and quivering, insisting that family forgives. Then Dad's clipped messages, angry and commanding, telling me I was ungrateful. Jenna sent walls of text, some pleading, some venomous, about how I had destroyed her life, how she was embarrassed at school pickup because other parents whispered. I didn't reply. I let every voicemail rot in the inbox, every message sit unread until I hit delete. It's funny when you stop answering, the silence feels like freedom. For so long, I'd carried their weight. Every holiday, every family dinner, every conversation had been about Jenna and her kids. I was background noise in my own parents' house. But now, in mine, I was finally the one setting the rules. The day the locksmith came, I stood by as he changed every single lock. I paid extra for a reinforced deadbolt system and a keypad that required a unique code. Then I scheduled an upgrade with the security company motion sensors, glass break detectors, and a direct line to the local police department. When it was finished, I walked through the house, touching each new lock like I was blessing it. For the first time, I felt safe again. Mrs. Hayes checked in often. She felt guilty for not recognizing my family that night, but I reassured her. You warned me. You trusted your instincts. You're the reason I caught them. She patted my hand and said softly, you deserve better than people who use you, dear. And she was right. That house became more than just walls and a roof. It became proof that I could stand on my own, no matter what my family thought I deserved. I planted more flowers in the backyard, built a little stone path from the porch to the oak tree, and bought a set of Adirondack chairs. Every Saturday morning, I'd sit outside with a mug of coffee, listening to the birds and the faint hum of the neighborhood waking up. Peace. That's what I'd bought with my years of sacrifice. Sometimes, when I think back to my father's words telling me I wasn't worthy of a home because I didn't have kids, it still stings. But then I remember the image of him being escorted out of my living room by police, and I feel a strange kind of closure. They tried to take what was mine, they failed. I don't speak to them anymore. No calls, no visits, no explanations. The last email Jenna sent me was 5 pages long, a rambling mix of anger and desperation. I deleted it without reading past the first line. My peace is worth more than her drama. Now, when I unlock my front door at the end of a long business trip, I breathe deep and smile. The house smells like me: fresh coffee, clean laundry, a vase of cut flowers from my own garden. No one else's fingerprints are on it. It's mine. My safe place. My reward. And I know I'm not alone. I've got Mrs. Hayes, who waves from her garden every morning. I've got friends who show up with bottles of wine and burgers for the grill, friends who never once asked me to hand over my house keys. What my family did was unforgivable. But in a twisted way, they gave me a gift. By crossing the line so blatantly, they freed me from the obligation to keep them in my life. I used to feel guilty about not being the perfect daughter or sister. Now I feel proud of being someone who finally stood up and said, no more. My home is mine. My peace is mine. And I'll protect both with everything I've got. This story delivers a powerful reminder that sometimes protecting your peace means setting boundaries, even with family. Renee worked hard for years, saving carefully and sacrificing comforts to achieve her dream of homeownership. Instead of celebrating her accomplishment, her family tried to diminish it, demand it, and ultimately violate it. The lesson is clear: love and loyalty should never be used as excuses for entitlement. Family may expect unconditional access, but respect is earned, not owed. For many middle-aged Americans, this resonates deeply, whether it's grown children draining resources, siblings taking advantage, or parents refusing to respect independence. The takeaway is that you have the right to enjoy the fruits of your labor without guilt. Boundaries are not selfish, they are necessary for survival and peace of mind. By holding firm, Renee not only reclaimed her home but also discovered who truly supported her. In daily life, this translates into giving yourself permission to say no, to invest in your own well-being, and to choose relationships that uplift rather than drain you. Peace of mind is priceless, and sometimes the bravest act of love is protecting it fiercely even if it means walking away.